I'm Tom Van Riper from Forbes. Our panel today, New York, New York is our theme. People from New York City doing business in a market, great market, also a tough competitive market for sports and for other things like New York City. Just to quickly introduce our panel, getting started from my immediate left, Lou DiPaoli is Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Revenue Officer with the New York Mets. Fred Mangione, Chief Marketing Officer with the Barclays Center and with the Brooklyn Nets. Is that Drew? Dan. Who's next and who's third? Okay. Drew Scheinman, Chief Marketing Officer of the Breeders' Cup, and on the end is Dan Zosner, who is Chief Operating Officer with the USTA. He works right here. So, gentlemen, since the name of this panel is New York, New York, we thought we'd throw this open to New York. What's tough? What's good about doing business here? This is a market that's obviously a great market if you're in sports. It's a big market. It's a big corporate market. It's a dynamic market, but it's also very competitive. All right, lots of choices, lots of places people can go with their entertainment dollars, with their discretionary income on sports and entertainment. So to each of you, just to get started, what's the best thing, what's the good thing, and what's the tough thing about doing business here in New York if you're in sports?
I was going to say, do we have to turn this on? Oh, good, thanks. I think you answered your own question. So one of the beauties about New York is that it is a big market, and there's a lot going on here, but there's also a lot of competition. So a big plus for is the size of the market, but there's also a lot going on outside of just the sports competition. You talk about the entertainment dollars, just, traffic. There's a lot of other issues. But I just started here with the Mets this past July, and I spent 5 years in Pittsburgh, and I've spent time in other smaller markets. One of the advantages that we have, and it's a huge advantage, is the size of the marketplace. So is anybody here from Pittsburgh? Okay, so the size of the market is 2.3 million people in the DMA. Okay, there are 2.3 million people who live in Queens, where we are right now. All right, I think there's 2.6 in Brooklyn. I mean, you just start adding it up, and just the raw throughput that you can get here is significantly larger than what you can do in most other markets, and it's a huge advantage, let alone before we get into the corporate side. So I think it's a blessing and a curse, but mostly a blessing because the competition that we have, with the folks on this panel are some. I think a rising tide lifts all boats. I mean, we all try to work together. We have good relationships. We don't really look at each other as competition more than just it's another option. People can go to Barclays, they can come to Citi Field, they can go to the Breeders' Cup, whatever it may be. But we try to look at it from a positive angle. I think there's much more positive here than negative, no doubt.
I guess from the Brooklyn side, what we tried to do when we came in the marketplace was own Brooklyn first. Lou knows his marketplace, so it was right, just 2.6 million people in Brooklyn. So we came in and said, let's own Brooklyn and then let's expand from there. And that's what we've done. And but you have to stay on your toes in this marketplace because we're in business 19 months, 20 months, and we're already saying, what do we got to do better? What do we got to do next? What's coming around the bend? We outperformed our first year at the gate. We outperformed it on the team, although we would have liked to gone 2 more rounds. But we're taking steps of what we need to do. But the main thing that comes together through it all is the way we treat people, and we think that's our differentiator. With our Disney Institute that we brought on board, and the way we treat people. My counterparts who I get an email from someone in the building every night who's there, whether I'm there or not. Was that your building? It's fantastic, and we all criticize each other a lot more than the fans will. And when you're hearing that, unprovoked, it's showing that it's working. So we said, hey, being the new guy on the block, and even everyone knew this building was coming for 8 years before we finally got here, we said, what can the difference be about leaving this building that people will say, what a great time, no matter what happens on the court, on the stage, or on the ice. So that's kind of the approach we took to be able to fish in this market a little bit differently.
So I'll talk from a business perspective in terms of getting business done. And when I joined Coca-Cola as the head of sports marketing, I remember one of the jokes was, okay, who are you going to have lunch with this week? Because you run out of people so quickly. I think one of the great opportunities in New York, it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity with the quality of the people on this panel and many others in this room. The greatest value in being in this city is the access. You can access any decision maker, anybody trying to create any opportunity in this market. It's not a sense of arrogance relative to other markets, but it is the reality of doing business in New York. And when you have great properties like the ones on this panel, and again, ones represented in this conference, that's all you ask for, is just get to the table with the right people. So I think from that perspective, there's no place better to do business than in New York, and the traffic and all the other things that we challenged with every day are very real, but the opportunities are unprecedented.
So the biggest positive in a market as large as New York is that whether you're attending or you want to participate in, there's just an insatiable appetite to spend on quality events, quality facilities, quality satisfaction. And the biggest challenge for us in the last 5 years, we've seen over $6 billion of sports construction in the New York, New Jersey market. Every single facility that's represented here and others have built new facilities. 5 years ago, we had the youngest facilities in the marketplace, and now we had the oldest. And it caused not necessarily a wake-up call, because we've tried to reinvent ourselves as often as possible, but it just became a challenge to recognize that all the other facilities were doing a little catch-up, and you just need to make sure you stay on your toes.
And Dan, unlike in your case, unlike venues like Citi Field or the Barclays Center, you are in charge of a venue that basically gets most of its revenue in one event, right, over the course of a couple of weeks late in the summertime. A lot of people travel to come to it. Same is largely true of the Breeders' Cup, by the way. What's good and bad about that? About kind of having a lot of eggs in one basket when you're attracting not only fans, but corporate sponsors as well?
There's no question, and our track record is phenomenal. I mean, our average sponsors are with us for 20 to 30 years, so we've got a great track record with them. But the fact is you have to work on the relationships 12 months a year, whether or not the event lasts for 2 weeks or it goes for a 6-month season. For us, from a fan satisfaction, one of the toughest things is you're basically bringing in, last year we brought in 6,800 people to work the event, and you've got to train all of those 6,800 people within a very short window. They're not working for you all year long, so you hope for 50%, 60% retention on a lot of those 6,000 plus people, but it's a struggle to get the new people hired each year and get them trained within the system so that when people come out to the Open, whether they're here for the first day or the last day, their experience is phenomenal.
And you, Dan?
I'm sorry.
True. I'm sorry.
So similar.
Yours is even more of a kind of a one-off. It's a single event.
Yes.
Really, Breeders' Cup, you don't have the race in New York, but you do business out of New York, and it's all about getting people to come for one event. I understand the Breeders' Cup has gotten active in the last few years in new initiatives for sponsors, events on the infield, and so forth. Is that something you're still doing that you started a few years ago, and has that been successful? So
we've been very aggressive in, not unlike Danny as a role model for us, frankly, in taking a 2-day World Championship event, which is the richest purse in U.S. sports and has an extraordinary amount of money coming into the market from around the world, taking the success of that and perfecting it as much as you can as a one-off event, and then taking the best qualities of our event. And we just announced 2 weeks ago a partnership with NBC Sports to aggregate the best racing events, the best venues, in the best markets, best beautiful crowds, best of the best, which is consistent with the Breeders' Cup brand. So for now, for horse racing, we will have a season that will start from the Belmont Stakes, hopefully Triple Crown winning Belmont Stakes, and culminate at the World Championship of the Breeders' Cup. So we've taken the best qualities of our event, because selling a one-off is very challenging, and we heard from very positive feedback from our partners. They love the brand, they love the property, they love the experience, but they want to be around with us year-round. So we now have the scale, we now have the platform, and now we'll bring on partners with us on a year-long basis, which is a very exciting time for horse racing and certainly for the Breeders' Cup.
Lou, you're dealing with obviously a well-known situation. The Mets' financial problems of recent years has been pretty well publicized, losing money to Bernie Madoff. Everyone knows about that. You came aboard to the Mets less than a year ago, I believe, from Pittsburgh. So, you are faced with a situation of pretty much selling a team that's being run like a small market team, at least for right now, in a big market. It's a tough challenge. How have you gotten creative? How do you talk to corporate customers or potential customers and say, you should put your money with the New York Mets because here's where we're going forward?
Sure. It's a great question. A lot of experience being in smaller market situations. So obviously I was in Pittsburgh for 5 years. I was in Miami for 5 years. I was in Atlanta for 3.5 years, spent some time at the NBA. So one thing you have to do is you have to understand your business, whether what's happening on or off the field. That's something that, as a marketer, as a person in charge of generating revenue, you can't sit back and wait for it to happen. You have to go make it happen yourself. So one thing we try to do is take a look at really three basic things, is the structure, the systems, and the staffing that you have in your organization. And are they properly aligned in the right way so that you can turn around and take advantage of the marketplace regardless of what's going on from a financial perspective, team performance perspective, because at the end of the day, you still have a job to do. And I've been in situations where, with the Pirates, again, small market, low payroll, and a team that went 57-105 back in 2010. And we increased our gate that year by, 2010 was like 8%. And then the following year, we went up by 26%. So you can do it. You just have to have the right systems in place. You got to have the right structure, the right plan. And it's really taking a look deeper into the data, finding out what does your fan base want? What does your corporate client want? Right? You have to be very flexible. The days of saying, look, here's $1 million proposal for a sponsorship, or here's what your suite contract is, take it or leave it. You have to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more imaginative. What experiential assets can you roll into a deal? What does the client want? So the first thing I always try to work with our team on is, if you're going to try to sell somebody something, the first thing you have to do is ask them what they want and then try to deliver it to them. It's a lot easier for someone to buy if you've given them what they're asking for, what they're looking for. It's very simple, but it's something that gets, in many cases, overlooked at times as you try to just jam something down somebody's throat that they don't necessarily want. So ask them what they want, be flexible, nimble, think more like a, for lack of a better term, small market club. And if we maintain that type of an attitude or a mindset when the team is getting better, which that's kind of where we are now, the growth is going to be exponential, and that's kind of what our job is all about.
Citi Field, and by the way, I think this, I'd love to hear everyone comment about this, kind of a general point, but Citi Field opened in 2009. Pretty bad timing, right in the wake of the financial crisis. Yankee Stadium was the same thing. Corporate tickets, people were cutting back. Politicians were speaking out against it as a legitimate business expense and a tax write-off. It was a very, very tough atmosphere. Most of what I heard, people in charge of buying corporate tickets at corporations were having to justify, kind of go up to senior management and actually justify, why this is a good investment, actually show an ROI of some, at least of some magnitude. It became less of kind of an automatic given thing. So for all of you, in general, since 2009, it's been 5 years. Most of what I hear is that things have loosened up a little bit, but are maybe not quite what they were, pre-financial crisis. What are you finding in terms of the atmosphere today? Is it a little bit better? And have you had to make,
adaptations
in relation to the financial crisis a few years ago that has kind of become the new normal today in terms of maybe additional things you need to offer to entice buyers?
Sure. I'll take that first. We've seen that the marketplace loosen up a little bit, but not really. You're going to have people who are still going to be held accountable for some sort of an ROI or ROO. You have to be able to show that you're making a proper investment. And I think that's a good thing, because I think for a while, the money was flowing fast and free for a while, and people could get away with, maybe just making a spend with an organization that wasn't very strategic. And I'm going to speak general terms here. On the back end, I think some teams and properties got lazy or sloppy without trying to deliver some sort of an ROI because it was a little bit easier. And the economic downturn caused all of us to be a little bit more prudent about what we do and how we run our business, how we approach our potential prospects and our current partners, so that we can deliver on the right value for them. And it was a good wake-up call for everybody to get back to the basics and run business the right way.
By the way, for anyone else also, just as part of this, how do you find most of your corporate clients measure ROI? What are the metrics? It's a little bit of an inexact science with something like sports tickets. Just another aspect to consider. Yeah.
Well, everyone does it differently, but we try to, and Lou hit on it before, we try to go in first with a wants and needs analysis when we're pitching. When you talk about the market landscape, tickets, it was always there, and you could always get creative moving tickets. The thing that struck us a little bit when we were opening up the building was suites. The fact that every team in this market has a suite sales staff is mind-boggling. You never had it at the Yankees. You never had it at the football teams. You never really had it. You never had it at Madison Square Garden, and everyone had service staffs. And now everyone's selling. So when you had sales guys going in, and you were just one of the next 5 in line, it was really, while people had no money and while people didn't want to put their names on a suite, it was tough, but you got to get creative. You have to know what the client needs, and you have to know how they're going to measure ROI. Are they bringing out clients? Are they taking care of employees? Are you going to teach them how to donate it to write it off? Are there some impactful charities they're dealing with that they can use the suite for? That does a variety of different things then. And you got into the suite education business because, for us, we used to go on sales appointments, and, the first thing our CEO would do was just boast about all the events that was coming into the building. And me and my sales team, and a bunch from here today, we'd cringe in the corner. Like, we can't tell people there's 250 events. It's crazy. They're saying, I can't manage that. And it is tough to manage. But if you go through the process of how you manage, how it's going to work, what you're going to do with the tickets, and how you can go back to your boss and show the ROI that came through, it's an impactful tool. And when you talk about as many people are in this market, they need different things to do. And you do find out at the end of the day, if they want to do it, there was always money in New York. There really was. They just got a little prudent in how they were spending it, and you just had to get creative at how to get it. And as the ROI came back a little bit, you're still not finding everyone coming in to lose point. You can't slap as we would call an ego buy anymore. And so you're getting some signage, you're getting a suite, because now nobody wants signage. They want digital, they want Twitter, they want Facebook. So you got to just start from scratch. Blank canvas, what do you need, go from there, and hopefully from that respect. It doesn't matter if you're sold out every night or if you're trying to make your way. I think you got to go in with the same philosophy, and then finally you got to just invest in your people. When we had the leanest at times, we were trying to get a new building going while we were coming off one of the worst seasons in NBA history with 18. We felt 5 wins away of being the worst team ever while we were trying to sell suites in Brooklyn. It was crazy. But what we did was, at the time, and nothing else, we invested in our employees and our staff, so we knew when times did change, we had the right infrastructure, and that helped us get to Brooklyn.
Tom, it was interesting for us. We saw no erosion after 2009 on the sponsorship side. In fact, our business is stronger than ever. But on the subscriber side, we were starting to see the erosion. And the nice thing for us was that people were starting to get a lot more educated on the secondary ticketing market. And so sale by sale, we were able to walk through with the subscriber to have them understand while they're outlaying all the money on the front end, they actually can get a return on their investment. And that helped what could have possibly been a 20% drop in our subscription that year to basically being level with prior years. And our ticket office did a phenomenal job driving that point to all the subscribers.
And I would just add, when you have quality of property value and unique hospitality experiences, then that's something that people, companies, corporations, parties can't buy anyplace else. That makes your property that much more valuable. And I think about the people on this panel and the unique experiences that you can offer to customers that they can't get someplace else, and that's part of the creativity. It's also part of the resources that everybody has at their disposal. That's got a lot of stickiness to keep your partners involved.
Okay. Fred, you came in the Nets and the Barclays Center with a very interesting situation, almost a chance to kind of create something from scratch. A little bit of an unusual situation where you had the New Jersey Nets moving from one market to another, but yet within the same larger market, kind of a unique situation. I know that relatively few season ticket holders came over with the Nets from New Jersey. It was really kind of a whole new, build from the ground up in Brooklyn kind of situation. What were the challenges of doing that, kind of building a whole new fan base, even with a team that was familiar, especially when you have the Knicks and you have a lot of other competition here in New York? Convincing those corporate buyers the Barclays Center, is where you want to be. Yeah, well,
it started, with research and time. We joked around a lot. The building was delayed 8 to 9 years, so people say, well, you better have nailed it when you got there because you had enough time to prepare. But Jersey was kind of our day job, as we said, and Brooklyn was our night job, so we had to kind of mine in the city and start mining in Brooklyn and being ready. And it all started with a great partner, in Barclays, who believed in the vision and the goal of what the building meant and what it meant for the borough. But it was two separate, and again, going off what Lou said with the number of people in Brooklyn, we said the number one goal was to own Brooklyn. Let's get in Brooklyn, get a brand. And, I've been with the club now 13 years, and as I tell people, I didn't come here for Brooklyn, but I stayed for it. And it was almost scary when we moved the brand over, we moved the team, how 35 years in Jersey was wiped away in 6 months. And it really gave us a fresh look. It really gave us, and people say, you guys are going to be a case study one day. And the things that we had to do and prepare to do it in the city at the same time, there was still a lot of competition. It did help. We were kind of the last guy in at that point. We were going to open up right after City and the new Yankee Stadium, MetLife, but we were able to then do research and see what was working. We reduced suites. We reduced the number of people in the suites. We played around with some capacities. We came up with new different value adds that wasn't going on in the marketplace. So when we went in and said, okay, why this? And we were still, we're number 5 in the NBA right now in revenues, coming off 27, but we're also 4th in the NBA in prices. We're not cheap, and we knew that coming in. So it all came back to the value add and why were we going to be different than any other team or for that end, any other entertainment vehicle in the marketplace.
You've also got the Islanders coming in right in another year and a half. And in addition to the Islanders...
So we got to do it again. So
What's that?
So we got to do it all over again.
Right. I was going to ask, how much opportunity or lack of opportunity is there to kind of mix and match and offer packages? You have the NHL coming in, scheduled to come in the fall of 2015.
Yes.
And of course, the Barclays Center's also been aggressive in getting a lot of other events, a lot of college basketball, boxing. You got the ACC tournament coming in 2017, probably going head-to-head, I guess, with the Big East tournament over at Madison Square Garden. Except you guys have Syracuse. That'll be nice. Among all those different properties, how much opportunity is there to kind of bundle this stuff together and make deals with suites, and how much of it is tough to do that because in many cases, especially let's say NBA versus NHL, you really have two
totally different markets
of fan bases. So to what degree can you do that stuff?
Well, when we came to Brooklyn, the first thing the suite buyer said to us was, well, you don't have a hockey team, you don't have enough events. Now the hockey team's coming in and they're like, where are all my concerts going to go? So, New York is New York, but what you said at the end is there are two different bases. When we moved the Jersey base over, we went to our ownership group and said, we see 10% of that base coming over. For the Islanders, and we wanted everyone from New Jersey to come over, but we knew that wasn't reality. Islanders are going to be a little different. We expect a much more of their base to come over, a little more passionate. They haven't won in a while, but they have a passionate base that's just urgent for something new. They're in a rundown building that's, that along with everything else, we just purchased that as well, so we'll be revitalizing that building along the way. But when we're going to bring the Islanders over, we're going to take the same approach. Now, the Islanders are going to stay the New York Islanders. The brand's going to stay the same, so it's not a total...
We're not going to see the Islanders in black and white in Brooklyn.
I didn't say that, but we're going to bring the Islanders over, and we're going to give it a refresh, not a total rebrand makeover. So we'll always stay the New York Islanders as a little different than what we did with the Brooklyn Nets. We want to create some synergies with the two teams that you don't really see in a lot of double team. To your point, usually hockey's here and NBA's here. Now the fan bases will tell you inside and out with research, it is there. Now, look, well hockey, we'll go a little bit wider than we did coming out. Hockey in Brooklyn will be something new. Again, we have to go through an education mode with those. But again, right now, the destination for the Islanders right now is coming to a brand new building, coming to the top building in America where hockey, will be something with sight lines and an experience that you've never seen before. We got some seats that are going to be behind the glass that are just going to be off the charts. So, again, we're going to bring something different to the market that it hasn't seen before.
Can bringing the Islanders help grow the Nets fan base in Long Island, do you think? Or is that just kind of a separate...
Well, look, there is a strategy there. We want to be able to market, only 5% of our attendees right now are coming from Long Island. So we're hoping that there is some people who are first-time viewing. What's amazing is many people may have been at a Barclays Center. We'll still get research back that on a nightly basis, 50% of the building are coming for the first time. So again, to lose original, that just shows how many people are in this marketplace, the tourism that comes in and everything that comes in that you're never going to touch anyone in this. No matter what we do every night and all the sleepless nights we have, you will never touch everyone. So, but with that becomes opportunity.
Dan, getting back to the U.S. Open, more of a one-time event again. I know sponsors, from what I've seen in the past, have often activated around the U.S. Open, have used it to try new things. The Heineken has its Red Star Cafe right outside. I remember one year they were using it specifically to try to push or test a new cold-filtered beer that they were putting out and that they were testing. What is it about the demographic of the U.S. Open? When people come here, do you think that makes the U.S. Open the right event for that type of thing? Is it common with a lot of sponsors to use it as kind of a testing ground for new products?
There's a lot of good answers for that. I mean, first of all, we get 16% of our fan base that comes from outside of this country. Almost 40% of the people come from outside of the tri-state area, so we're not appealing to just people from the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut marketplace. The household income, 160,000 plus. The international aspect of it, the fact that we broadcast over 200 countries has gotten a lot of sponsors very excited about the event. You're absolutely right about Heineken. They're introducing something again this year. The fact that the average fan stays here for 2 to 3 times longer than they would for a traditional event, with the exception of what Drew's doing. But, you know, our fan during the daytime will stay for 10 hours, and they just want to watch 50% of their time tennis, and the rest of the time they want to be entertained. So we've become like the Disney World of tennis, and I think the sponsors have really gravitated to that, and a lot of our blue chip sponsors are as focused on the eyeballs on TV as they are on the activation on site.
Similar with you?
I'd say it's very similar, and I have to give props to Danny. I mean, I think U.S. Open, I mean, was it 10 years ago? I think it just kind of made a transformational change from what it used to be. And as a big fan and now a strong observer, they've turned the festival part of the experience into a very seamless integration with the best tennis competition and event in the world. And I think that's the delicate balance as a fan and as a practitioner, how to really do it the right way. So certainly we do that now for 2 days. Our master plan going forward beyond our challenge series is to take 2 days to 5 days to 7 days, almost similar to what USA TA has done, also very similar to Monaco Grand Prix, because we have a very similar audience like the U.S. Open, like the Monaco Grand Prix. We have a captive audience that's spending money. They want to do more things that have a variety of different opportunities for them to experience, not just around horse racing. So I think their model and the whole festival interactive experience lends itself to consumer engagement and to sponsor support. And it's a great model for certainly what we're going to be doing in the future.
You know, in general, people have told me over the past few years that the sports industry, because it caters more and gets at least a relatively larger percentage of its revenue from the corporate buy, it has come to largely mirror the corporate world itself in terms of the ups and downs of the industry. It used to be, you know, when baseball tickets a long time ago were cheap when I was a kid, it was one of the last things people cut because you could go to a Met game for $5. It's really kind of more of a corporate corporate-centric business. Do you agree? I'm just wondering if each of you agree with that. Is that something that, you know, you have to hedge against? Is part of your business plan in general adhere to that, saying we know we're going to have ups and downs, relative booms and busts, just like the corporate world we serve does? Here's how we hedge against that.
Sure. I think that's a little bit of a broad, general statement. Yeah. I think depending on where you are in the building, yeah, it's going to be predominantly corporate or predominantly high net worth individual, or it's going to be family. So looking at the Mets, you're going to see a trend here. I talk a lot about data. I'm kind of a data guy. So last year, just under 70% of the people in the park who went to Mets games came with some sort of family member. So that's probably a little counterintuitive to some, but those in the business will say that makes sense for baseball. So it's not predominantly corporate, it's actually predominantly family. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do is shift our marketing focus to let people know that we are more of a family destination. Tickets are still affordable. It's not $5. We'll let you in for $11 these days, Tom. But you know, you can also get in for $300 or $400 if you wanted to. It all depends on what real estate do you want and what type of experience are you looking for. But it's our job to segment out, you know, based on the real estate in the building, like everybody else is doing here, like, okay, what is the right price point and the right offer for the right real estate in your ballpark? And then you have to learn how to market to each one of those segments so that we can capitalize on all of them. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, obviously we're going to be in big trouble.
You know, by the way, I did look up I remember paying an $8 seat in 1983 for a field box at Shea. Yeah. I found that an inflation calculator on Google. You know what $8 is in today's dollars? Like maybe 25. That's all it is. It's going to cost about 10 times.
It's a little bit more than 25, but you know, yeah. But you know, payroll's gone up as well too.
But the experience is much better.
Yeah, exactly. No doubt. I was there as well at Shea Stadium, and this is much better.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, you know, again, coming into a new building with the Nets and, you know, some of the demand, we just break it out by tiers. So we just cap where we sell certain products as far as season tickets, group sales, mini plans, and individual tickets. So a lot of teams in the NBA, whether they were expansion franchise or other clubs that did move, we kind of watch what they did, because some people sold out season tickets in the whole building and it was the same people coming in every night. And again, being in Brooklyn and the borough it is, we did not want that to happen. So we make sure there's affordable tickets from our group sales perspective. We make sure there's some cheap tickets on an individual perspective. And, we have the corporate guy on the floor. I mean, again, our floor seats go anywhere from $5,000 to $3,000 depending on where you're sitting at night. So we understand that, but we don't want to shut out the general fan either.
Premium tickets are really, I think, critical to the success of probably everybody on this panel, and certainly when you have an event that is very compelling in its nature and tickets are limited, there's a lot of upside to continue to grow the premium market, not just in tickets but hospitality as well.
So our corporate base is critically important to us, and we obviously never lose sight of that. But the reason that we should actually host the event is because the USTA is the governing body of tennis, and our sole mission is to grow the sport of tennis, and we need to be doing that by getting younger and becoming much more diverse. So the ironic thing for the Open is, for a long time, that's not what it represented, and we've changed that drastically over the last 10 to 15 years. We've skewed a lot younger. We need to become a lot more about families. Families are going to introduce the sport to the next generation. The first 4 days of our 20-week tournament is our qualifying tournament. It actually has one of the largest purses in the country, but it's a free tournament. So 10 to 15,000 people can come out on a daily basis and watch unbelievable tennis. Then we have Arthur Ashe Kids Day, which is a bit of a festival into its own right on a Saturday, and then it gets broadcasted on Sunday. That's a free event. And there's no question the Open starts to get a little pricey once we get into the main draw, but we still have 4 days of the tournament where tickets are literally like $20, so it becomes much more affordable. And then we have grounds passes that are upwards in the range of $60 now, and truth be told, we probably could charge as much as $100 for those tickets, but we try to keep them at as low as possible so we can get as many families to come out for an unbelievable day of tennis. So it's a bit of a juggling act to try and weigh the importance of us trying to get younger and get families coming out for the event.
Okay, last quick question to any of you before we start taking questions. One thing that I've noticed is, I guess what I would call mini naming rights is becoming a bigger thing at a lot of venues. In addition to the overarching naming rights like Citibank and Barclays Center, we have a lot of sections, corporations who are buying club seats, buying suites, are also kind of naming certain sections. One quick example, you guys with the Mets just turned the Champions Club into the Hyundai Club. You see that at Yankee Stadium all the time. The Yankees, of course, didn't really have the gumption to change the name of Yankee Stadium. It was just I guess, too valuable a name. So they kind of made up for that, it seemed like, by having a lot of little mini naming rights deals for certain sections within the stadium. Is that becoming a must in most venues now? That type of thing, or is that too strong? Too strong way to put it.
No, I don't think it's a must. It's really, again, it's a real estate play, and it depends on what else is included in that naming rights package. So, again, if you're going to be naming the Hyundai Club, for example, or the Acela Club at our ballpark at Citi Field, those are, destinations in the park. Again, when we're segmenting out of who sits where, how we price the ballpark, what's going to be going on in those areas, just to put their name on it isn't really going to be a solution. It's what type of an integrated package do we have? So when you go on to the Caesars Club at Citi Field, it literally feels like you're at Caesars. In fact, we're in the process of talking to them. If you see the gigantic Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, that when you walk into Caesars' actual casinos, they're actually going to be getting a couple of them and putting them outside the entrance to the Caesars Club at Citi Field. Because you want it to feel like you're really at their place, and it's good branding and recognition for them. Is it a must-have? No, but I think it makes a lot of sense for the right partner if you're delivering the right assets with it.
And for us, it was just about activation. We knew coming into the building, after our primary partner in Barclays, from there we were going to have 8 as we deemed founding. So we just split up different areas of the bowl. And, our premium club, where all our floor ticket holders go down, is the Calvin Klein Club. Again, it integrates with what Calvin Klein's trying to, there's a coolness factor, there's dimmed lights, the gentlemen and ladies are in, our color scheme of black and white, but in Calvin Klein, so you feel like and you recognize what they're wearing, how they're doing it, and we make sure everything we do all throughout, we have a Mondavi bar upstairs, their brand is red, it's tinted. You look up from anywhere in the bowl, you can kind of look up there and see this red room up there that, again, makes sense for the brand. It makes sense for what they're trying to deliver, and they're in the right spot of the building. So it's more of what makes sense, again, what the sponsor wants, how they want to activate it, and then if it coincides with the brand.
So when I was at Coke and I did deals with all these parties and many others, we used to say as big as the brand Coca-Cola was, we would do those deals to borrow the equity, the unique local equity, whether it be the Nets, the U.S. Open, the Mets, and many others. And in a similar way, I think there's an opportunity for branding with partners like a Calvin Klein, which is very tasteful and in its own ways builds the equity of the Nets and the Barclays Center. So I think if it's done right, it's value additive. It's not critical based on the sponsorship requirements. I don't think for any of the parties represented here, but it really could bring value. And certainly, again, U.S. Open, when I walk through the festival, it just feels like a very seamlessly exciting, interactive environment. It's not intrusive. And I think that's the delicate balance, because I think we've all seen in our travels where some parties, not Pittsburgh, small markets, but some other markets and some other teams, they do cross that line. And I think that's the very delicate balance.
So ironically, we're in Arthur Ashe Stadium, which is located next door to Louis Armstrong Stadium, and it's all housed within the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. And I could assure you none of those three families have invested $1 in the USTA that way financially, but they've all contributed tremendously to the sport of tennis. In Louis Armstrong's case, we inherited that because he lived in Corona, the next town over, and it's actually in our lease. We could never change the name even if we wanted to. But the USTA's mantra forever has really been about quality over quantity, so we have a limited number of sponsors, and they are just integrated all into the event in a much larger capacity. So the real estate they have is far greater than what might be at some other events, and it's just something that the organization has stuck to for a long time and will continue into the future.
All right, and with that, if anyone has questions, I guess I'll answer and we'll direct them over. Yep.
I'm Len Parno with Turnkey Sports. We do research for a number of you, and one of the things that we're starting to look into is whether or not customers in different geographic markets are harder to please. So tell me what your thought is with respect to customers in New York, suite holders, club seat holders, and season ticket holders. Are they tougher in New York than they are in other places?
So that's a great question, Lenny. I obviously have been in a few other markets. I'm originally from New York. I don't think they're any more difficult, to be quite honest with you, here in New York versus Pittsburgh versus when I was in Atlanta or Miami. I don't think they're any more difficult, specifically here in New York. I think they're just a little bit more boisterous. And they're not afraid to let you know, which is okay. Where when I was in Atlanta, people were a little bit more under the radar, a little bit quiet. And I don't know if you can tease that out of the research that you're going to do, but I think that's important to kind of know your fan base. Because if you treat people in New York like they were from Pittsburgh or from Atlanta or Miami, it's not going to work out that well. So you have to be very direct and understand what your fan base is like and just meld that. But I'd be very curious to see what that looks like, no doubt.
I guess I would say they're demanding, and from us, again, with cost comes expectations. So, they're paying a lot to come to your building, they're paying a lot to come to the facility, so they expect more. And I think they expect a delivery, they expect a service, they expect ease of flow. I mean, they're tweeting us if they're online for 10 minutes, like they've never seen a line before in a building. Right. But so they're a little bit more demanding, and you try to manage that. But with that, that's where I feel the service and your staff in the building has to come through for it, because if you're giving that value back, then sometimes the demand diminishes. So.
And I'd say as an international championship event, it's interesting because the people who attend our event are also the kinds of people that are attending the best events around the world. So when they come and they eat food from Bobby Flay or Wolfgang Puck or Nobu, or they don't, you're going to know about it because they've been through all those experiences, and that's more of the corporate level or the ownership level of the people who come to our events. But I would say with Fred, I think people today, and I've seen it in all three of these experiences, the quality of the guest experience has gotten so much better. I mean, it's just really, it's a higher level of quality, and because you've invested in it. These entities have invested in it. So it's really interesting. I'd be interested in your research because it was an event that moves around. It is different from LA to Lexington or Louisville or Del Mar or wherever events we may go to, because people do have different perspectives, for sure.
And I'll just put a different spin on it, looking at it from a sponsorship perspective. We've been reading the world for years now just to see what's going on in other events everywhere. and it's very interesting to see what our sponsors will accept in other markets versus what they do here, and it is night and day. I'm constantly amazed at the types of asks they make of us that they tolerate other places. So we're up for that challenge. We actually kind of thrive on it, so it makes it fun and interesting.
Good point.
Okay, any other questions? Anyone? No? Yes, sir, over there.
Yes. How would you see addressing the challenge of corporate consolidations, where at the ticket level, the suite level, where AT&T might have 3 suites in a venue, Dish Network has 2 suites in a venue. Now they're merged. Do you take it and try to upsell them to a bigger sponsorship, or do you work that much harder to keep them as a customer through AT&T or Dish Network? How do you see that challenge?
I mean, that's a big challenge. It happens every day. And it all depends on, how the deal gets constructed. Is there some sort of assumption of the current contracts? Ideally, you'd like them to keep as much inventory as they have and try to figure out a better solution. So now that they're going to have multiple entities kind of working as one, so you'd want to sit down with that group, whoever the new people in charge would be, or whoever the day-to-days will be, and figure out, okay, this is new for them. What do you think is going to work well? And what can we do differently to try to help you maximize? Because again, it could be a whole new branding play for this new entity. There's a lot of different pieces involved, but you need to have that open dialogue and sit down and ask the questions and figure out on a game plan together versus just saying, well, you've got a suite contract for now 5 suites. We'll talk to you when they're up. And that's not going to go so well because the renewal is going to come back and bite you in the rear end.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Again, we just getting back to the needs and wants analysis. If you don't, you got to give the customer what he's looking for. I think on our end, we would, look to save. And, first what you do is you see strategically, is it inventory you can resell? Is it something you can repurpose so they're giving you something back that someone else wants? I think first and foremost, and then from there going back and just making sure they realize the real estate they are giving up. Are there other people that are, when you talk about consolidation, you see that not even so much with companies consolidating now within a company, but other companies getting together now come saying, and you have 2 of them come up, hey, our suites are up and we want to take our 2 fulls and go into 1, and then you just lost 1 where you thought you had 2. So that game always comes about. And, so again, you got to look through and make sure that they're all getting what they need. Especially with us when we talk about, hey, well, that's great, but, Beyonce's only playing once. Who's getting it? This one only can, and you laugh about it, but, and a bunch of my teams over to the right, they deal with that every day. If you see the programs and everything we have internally to manage people's suites, it's a pretty impactful thing. I mean, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame comes in, if 1 person gets it, how do you figure that out? So that's what we try to go against and say, this is why you want every event. Doesn't always work, but you at least want to walk them through that.
Anyone else? Any questions? No one. Okay, sure. Yeah.
By way of corporate sponsorships, are you finding that category exclusivity is a big ask with those deals? And what are your thoughts around offering for and against it? Is it depend on the venue?
That's our whole model, is category exclusivity.
Same. I think similar to Danny's model, quality versus quantity, and you really, to go deep with those partners, you need exclusivity.
Our goal, we have exclusive. Our goal is now, what's the next emerging category? What are we trying to find new? That's our challenge right now, because everyone has, especially, again, we talk tickets and suites on this, but when you look and you say, okay, well, these guys got United, these guys got American, and, and you go in and you're like, everyone beat you to it. The airline category's gone, or this category's gone, and so we say, what's the next emerging category? So we do keep those exclusivities, but every day we talking about what's the new emerging category, what are the new IPOs coming into the marketplace, and what companies are maybe coming from overseas that are now going to be headquartered here in the city, and how do we get to them maybe before the other guys realize that they're here. So we do a lot of research about emerging companies that are coming into the marketplace and try to do that. So.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of playing off what Fred said. One of the things that happens as you start examining the categories and the level of exclusivity maybe certain partners have that runs really deep is maybe when it becomes time for a renegotiation of the contract to find out, maybe you did this deal 10 years ago. Out of all these exclusivities that are still in here, what is still valuable to you? What are you really trying to protect, and what was the reason for this exclusivity? And then maybe there are ways, as Fred talked about earlier, that you could take some of those exclusivities out of the contract, give them some other assets back, but that you can monetize elsewhere. So the exclusivities are still very important, but as you start looking at some deals that were done in the last 5-10 years, some of them had such broad coverage on exclusivities that really limited you to maximize other opportunities. So you have to take a look at it the right way to make sure it still meets the partner's objective, and then figure out, okay, if they still want all those, great, but if there's one or two pieces you can carve out, then how can we go and attack it with some new emerging companies that may be able to help us all out?
Okay, anyone else? Any questions? No? All right, Lou, Fred, Drew, Dan, thanks very much. Thanks for a great panel. Thanks all for coming.